Hi there, welcome to Prime Sports with me, Razak Musbao. Now, the Heart of Folk Sports Complex at Pobiman is a few structures away from being completed. Now, the project, which began in 1995, has always been a reminder of what the club could achieve. However, for years, completing the project had been a challenge, forcing the club to often resort to renting places for even club training activities. Now, that has since changed, and in this report, Joy Sports' Victor Achu Tamakolo tells the full story of how the club has now changed the narrative.
Many years, Accra Hearts of Oak were criticized for not having something as basic as a training ground they could call their own. The paradox of that situation is that Accra Hearts of Oak have always, at least since 1995, owned a land big enough to accommodate the construction of 4, possibly more, of these training pitches that they've always been criticized for. And not just that, any other infrastructure that a modern football club ought to have.
We had a plot at Pobiman that was bought years ago, about 20, 40 years back, under the regime of Frank Sawyer. Frank Sawyer did very well. All they did was to put down giant pillars to identify our land.
But construction did not start immediately. And as we've already established, for the next 2 decades, they had to shuttle between Legon, Cantonments, and even Accra Central for places to train, while the club's administrative operations had to be carried out where we now call Farah Avenue.
So I remember one day, myself and my team went to Aquinas. We have been told that that's where they trained, because they trained there the day before. Only for us to be told by the communications team that, unfortunately, the school has given the field out to another institution, so they have to find an alternative ground.
Everything was done in the founder's house. Then they moved it to Tudu. That was where we had our office, 2-room office. More than 60 years until we acquired our own office on the Farah Avenue.
In 2011, the club was sinking. If you've seen a photo of the Phobia bed, which by the way is an old minibus Hearts of Oak used to own that was later on passed on to the Aurora's team, if you've seen a photo of that bus being pushed in traffic, it will be from that period. In the simplest of terms, things weren't great for Accra Hearts of Oak, and something had to change. What happened?
Hearts of Oak were in massive distress. Somewhere around 2010, 2011 thereabout, where the club needed a new direction. They needed to find a way of getting funds coming into the club. So the idea about floating shares to get investors coming on board came on. Some way, somehow, they didn't meet the requirements to enlist the club on Ghana stock market. So that wasn't to be. Then now the owner or the majority shareholder came through with the Strategic African Securities. As you see in SARS, you've seen Hearts of Oak play with that on their jersey. He came through to acquire the club, owning it as the majority shareholder, and since then been bankrolling the club. And the club has looked stable financially from that point, because everything is run through him and SARS.
Construction works on the facility started a few years before, but in 2022, cash requirements for the inaugural African Football League gave Togbi Apede a new perspective.
CAF invited Protocol and Hearts of Oak into a meeting when they were planning on introducing the African Football League, and there were requirements. What he saw in that meeting, what he heard in that meeting, pushed him to invest in the infrastructure of the club, because there were basic requirements, having their own facilities in terms of training, hostels, offices. That sparked some energy in him to come, to Ghana. And if you watch the process, right from that, Congress, when they came back, everything changed in terms of infrastructure for Accra. So we saw a lot more agency in their approach.
2 years later, Pobiman is almost complete. In fact, for the first time in its history, Hearts completed an entire football season while training on their own facility. That was the 2024-25 season. Beyond the lush artificial pitch, there are 2 natural grass pitches and a third that is still to be developed. The Hearts of Oak Sports Complex also houses basketball and tennis courts, but that's not all there is to Pobiman.
This is the coastal area. What you can see on my left-hand side over there, the L shape, is the administrative block, where coaches can still have their offices over there. And then the players can have their classrooms. And then let's say our nurses for medical, they also have an office over here. So that L shape here is the administration block. And on my right-hand side here is bedrooms meant for the academy boys. What is here is the same thing here. And then the U shape you are seeing also is also a hostel. Behind it is the 4 apartments that we went there before, meant for the technical team.
Last month, Hearts of Oak formally opened the rebuilt commercial center at Asylum Down, where once stood a dilapidated secretariat. Now stands a 4-story facility befitting a club the size of Accra Hearts of Oak. In 2016, Togby said the club was worth $8 million. But after these investments, its value will certainly appreciate.
Well, I mean, you're not just buying the infrastructure, you're also buying the history as well. A piece of land in Asylum Down costs you probably $2 million. Not to talk about the whole infrastructure on that piece of land. So it is worth something. Pobiman is huge. And once it's done there, it's also huge. So look, they are the most valuable club, if you ask me, in my own estimation.
In terms of investment into clubs, Togby Apete stands alone on Mount Rushmore. Yet, there are still significant voices of dissent. At last year's annual general meeting, the fact of his ownership of the club upset a few people.
The land is owned by, Hearts of Oak. We have had to go and renegotiate the transaction with the chiefs and elders of Pobiman. Okay? And I think at one time they were like 2 separate lands brought together. We had to bring 2 separate lands together in one lease agreement.
Basically, it's for Accra Hearts of Oak.
Who else?
We have been hearing the team belongs to someone.
Which team?
Accra Hearts of Oak belongs to someone.
Of course, it belongs to people.
Yes, so I would like to know because I'm also part of Accra Hearts of Oak.
So the Accra Hearts of Oak belongs to who? The owners. Yes. Now the project has delayed. The bank debt has matured. SAS has paid it. We couldn't call you to come and pay. We couldn't call you to come and pay. So SAS is paying on behalf of all of you. It deserves that respect. It doesn't mean that only SAS owns it. SAS paid for the head office, the commercial center. We could have come to each of you to bring money.
Regardless, Togby has set the club on the path to a sustainable future. If only they can extend their off-field magic to the pitch.
But I think that they should go into youth development, where they have scouts across the sub-region to be able to get the best out of the best players to train, them at Pobiman. That may also serve as a revenue generation option for them. We've seen Right to Dream and what they've done. Today they are owning clubs in Europe and in North Africa. And the talent here and the scouting structure they've put in place to be able to discover talents, train them properly, and export them.
Our interest will be only the best. This question of saying the person must be a Ghanaian, that should not be the objective. The best. If the best comes from Japan or Kenya, we don't care. Because when you have the best in your hands, your products will come out very good. So, and I can tell you all these things have been put in place.
In the last 5 years, Accra Hearts of Oak have won 4 major titles, but their consistent flirting with relegation perhaps says a bit more about the current state of the football team. So while their struggles on the pitch are worrying, what the club is building off it is completely exciting. For Joy Sports, Victor Achutan.
Well, indeed, exciting days for Accra Hearts of Oak. But away from Accra Hearts of Oak, the African Games ended a few months ago, but stories have not ended relating to some fallout from the Games. The Director General of the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, Professor Amin El Hassan, is the one who has clarified that the media house received only $105,000 and not $3 million, as stated by the Sports Minister Mustafa Yusuf to the Public Accounts Committee earlier in the week. Now, responding to a query from Sam Nete George, Member of Parliament for Ningo Prapram, about payment status for coverage, the sports minister had stated that full payments, which is in excess of $3 million, had been made to GBC. But reacting to the comment, Professor Al-Hassan refuted the claims, insisting that the station only received $105,000. First, let's hear from the minister who spoke at the Public Accounts Committee, and after that, we hear from the Director General of the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation.
With GBC to cover the All Africa Games, right? Can you share with this committee how much that coverage was for and whether payment has been made for same?
Yes, GBC was the official broadcaster for the African Games, the 13th African Games, and I can confirm that full payment have made to GBC.
Do you have per chance what the amount was?
I can't recall the exact amount, but I know that it's in the excess of $3 million US dollars.
You paid GBC
yes.
in excess of $3 million US dollars for coverage of the All Africa Games.
Yes.
Chairman, I think that I would rest here and maybe the next time GBC appears before us, because most of the technicians who worked on the All Africa Games have still not been paid. And so we wanted to ascertain if you have paid and how much has been paid. Chairman, I'm grateful.
Following this, the Director General of the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation responded to the sports minister's claim of having been paid in excess of $3 million, insisting that they only received $105,000 as benefits for the work they did at the African Games.
To GBC's benefit, I repeat, was $105,000 US dollars, and that is what we got.
Now, but does GBC have any evidence to back what you're saying? Because, I mean, the minister is the one in charge. He has made a statement.
Of course.
What evidence do we have?
We definitely have enough documentation. These monies are not paid in bags. They are paid through the bank, and they are indicated what the money is for. And before we do that, there's a letter we will receive from the ministry telling us whose payment it should be for. And so we don't act on our own, we act upon instructions. And that we have all the documentations, and we have everything in place to show that these monies, you see, public funds are not easily disbursed like that. GBC needs $3 million US dollars to do a lot of things. And if we got the $3 million, we would have gone ahead to start spending on GBC's needs, including procuring an OB van. We didn't get that money.
Now, George Sports have now intercepted a document relating to the contract that was signed between the Ministry of Youth and Sports and GBC relating to the coverage of the African Games. And you can see the document here, agreement between the Ministry of Youth and Sports and the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. And just to help you know that this is indeed the authentic document, you can see here it was signed on behalf of the Sports Ministry by the Minister, Mustafa Usif, and on behalf of GBC, Professor Amin Al-Hassan. And you can see the witnesses there. Now, in this contract, it was revealed that GBC, part of the obligations they had to do, you can see some of them were stated here: production of games from all venues, montage, signal distribution, talk about live recording and broadcast of the opening and closing ceremonies, talk about several things that GBC had to do. Now, here are the obligations. You get to see the amount of money GBC charged for the services that they were due to provide the sports ministry as far as coverage of the African Games are concerned. And over there, you see that it is agreed that GBC will provide services in the amount of $3,600,000. This was the contract that was signed between the Ministry of Youth and Sports and GBC relative to the coverage of the games. And in terms of payment of this money, it states here that the Ministry of Youth and Sports is solely responsible for the payment of the service provided, solely responsible. And further states that the Ministry of Youth and Sports will transfer the CD equivalent of the cash component to GBC for payment. and talks about in the event of foreign exchange differences, the Ministry of Youth and Sports must ensure that that is sorted. So fundamentally, the Ministry of Youth and Sports and the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation went into an agreement to broadcast the games to the sum of $3.6 million, and the Ministry of Youth and Sports had to get this to them. Now, following this, back and forth, the GBC wrote a statement to the Public Accounts Committee explaining why they have not received in excess of $3 million as stated by the Sports Minister. And they say in this statement that you could see there to the Honorable Chairman Public Accounts Committee, and talks about payment for African Games and to technicians. And if I could just start from the second paragraph, he says, per an agreement with the Ministry of Youth and Sports, GBC, as the official broadcasters, was to supervise the technical production teams that were to bring into the country their own production equipment and to undertake the production of the African Games. And it is important to clear that GBC was the official broadcaster but not responsible for the technical production of the games. The technical production was outsourced as GBC did not have the equipment to produce the games. It states the individuals or the companies that they outsource this very aspect of the work to, and the state PGS, the state Quality Media Production SL, and the state the Production Room as the companies they outsource some of these technical production to. And also say that of the total payment made for the games, and it is assumed that the total payment here is in reference to the $3.6 million that was agreed between the Sports Ministry and the Media House. GBC was only entitled to $105,000 US. Therefore, the statement that GBC was paid in excess of $3 million US comes as a surprise. That's what they say, that they were entitled only to $105,000 of the total payments made, which is believed to be in excess of $3 million. So bottom line, this is it. The Sports Ministry says they have indeed released the money to GBC, and GBC says they also have only gotten $105,000. We'll try and get some more reaction from the Sports Ministry and bring finality to this matter in the following days. Well, that's all we have for you on Prime Sports tonight, and we're going to leave you with some transfer stories that have unfolded in the last 24 hours, and we'll be back same time tomorrow.